If ever your life could be a true crime podcast episode, then this podcast is for you. We're about to embark on a roller coaster of emotions, insights, survival, and stories about escape. So buckle up and let the journey begin.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Escape Pod, a part serious, part hilarious dramedy featuring stories of escape. Escape from all the things, some of them funny, some of them not funny at all. I'm Julie.
And I'm Charity.
And you're listening to The Escape Pod. How's it going?
Like we were saying off air, this has been honestly one of the longest weeks I remember.
It's a hard week.
One hit after another. And it really stinks because the weather outside for December in South Dakota is gorgeous.
It's amazing.
And so, I mean, it should be like on cloud nine, like, oh my gosh, it's not freezing, it's not windy. Yeah. And then it's just one bucket of crap after another this week. I just can't.
Yeah, things go in spurts, right? And we're
this is bigger than a spurt. I would say this is full-fledged fire hose territory. Wrong end of a fire hose territory. And yeah, I'm kind of over it.
Yeah. So we're going to hibernate here in the Escape Pod. We are coming to you from a podcast suite on the One Heart campus in Rapid City, South Dakota. And if you want to know a little bit more about One Heart and the people we're working with trying to escape the crisis of poverty, please go to the prologue episode that you'll find that's a lot more about One Heart. In the work that we do, there are a number of people on the staff, and of course the people that we serve who are escaping all sorts of things. And a lot of those folks have successfully escaped lived experience of trauma, of victimization, some
violent crimes, sexual
assaults, addictions in some cases, but probably less so that, especially among our staff, than some having been the, I like to say, survivor of an assault or victimization. So
conqueror, superhero.
There you go.
Yeah.
Escape artist.
Escape artist.
You were an escape artist.
Yeah.
So a few episodes ago, we talked, if you're listening in order of recordings, we talked to Charity about, escaping her 13-year-old self and some of her antics as a girl or young woman. And some of them are pretty funny, but some of them are also pretty serious. So today we're taking a little more serious topic, and it'll help people, I think, understand why. I think now for people who know you, part of the reason why you want to do the work that you do, and for those who don't, just a little insight into your hosts here. So where do we start? What age do we start at with this story? How old were you?
Are you talking about like
an adult?
Are you talking about the leading into the trajectory to break these cycles? Or are you talking about like the episode capital E?
What makes more sense to start with?
Okay, I think I got it. Okay. So you want me just to roll?
Just roll with it.
Just roll with it. Okay.
Yeah.
So Julie has heard this story a couple of times at least. We've definitely gone down the rabbit holes and, talked about the differences in our upbringings. And I'll preface this story with I harbor no blame, no ill will towards the people who birthed me at all. I do believe that they were doing the best that they could with who they are and what they had and how they were raised and all the stuff that just, ends up creating a human being and your story and how you relate to other people with that. Not everybody's really cut out for parenthood. We know that that's incredibly stressful, especially to children have children of their own.
Yeah, your parents, just to be clear, if people haven't been listening from the get-go, were teenage parents. And not just like 18, 19, like, oh, I was a senior in high school. They were young. Like your mom was like 15.
She got pregnant with me at 15, finished 8th grade, which was, junior high school at that time in our community, which are now middle schools. They've changed a little bit since that time. My dad was in the process of, he was a senior. He was a little bit older, graduating. But they got pregnant with me, and it got real fast.
Sure.
And, and for my mom, I don't know if she's told me this or if I've inferred this. So this is just my view on that. And just, being in the work that I am, working with people in the crisis of poverty, and like Dr. Donna Beagle and her work. And one of the things Donna said that really stuck with me when I spent some time with her out in Portland was babies, boobs, and butts. That's what gets you noticed when you're struggling in the crisis of poverty as a young woman. And babies are like, you can get positive attention. It can also help get you out of situations, to like if you're in a household. In my mom's case, she grew up in generational poverty. So big family, very, very poor. And there were a lot of issues. And, I loved my mama and papa. They were cool. But I am aware that there was probably some dysfunction and some things going on.
For her, it maybe wasn't that great. And her memories as the daughter are different than your memories as the granddaughter.
Yeah.
That's not unusual.
She talked about some things. She's pretty private about most of it, but I was able to glean some things over the years. We're very close in age. I mean, my mom and I are 16 years apart, right?
Right.
So growing up, we were more girlfriends than anything. It was my dad's mom who was more of that mom figure to me.
Interesting.
And then, and she passed away when I was 14 at 48 years of age. Brain aneurysm took her out. And, I already had some issues, but I will say losing her exacerbated my self-destructive choices and things that I was doing. And, that really was a turning point and not a great direction. She was the glue, the safe base, just that, I think when you don't have that person who tells you that like you're special, you're beautiful, you're smart, it makes a big difference. Yeah. And when she exited this earth, I lost that. I didn't have that anymore. And I already, we've talked about stories from when I was 13. Well, 14 that happened. I already had self-confidence issues and all that kind of a thing. So I can honestly tell you it got incredibly worse after that. I mean, that's when I started dipping into my mom's drug stash. My mom was not a drug addict, but she always had a stash of speed uppers. And 13, 14-year-old should not be doing that crap. I almost OD'd one time. And she had no idea. Like, she had no idea. Just not tuned in. I would have noticed a dramatic difference in my kids. I have 2 adult children now. If they had done anything like that, I would have been able to tell. But no clue. No clue at all.
Interesting.
So anyway, I had access. And, when you're and I get it. I mean, I deal with people with substance abuse disorders all the time. And not that I ever developed a disorder or an addiction or anything like that. I do understand reaching for something to help you be, and it's false. It's all false, right?
Right.
But to reach for something to help you be something that you feel you're lacking or more of what you want to be, or give you that false confidence or that false sense of invincibility, or,
well, you even hear about, sometimes celebrities who say they start using something at a very young age. And a lot of times it's, I'd have to go to these parties. And I realized, it's easier to be at the party if I'm drunk or if I'm high or if I'm this or I'm that. And, you always think you're like so far removed from those people, but that it's fair if you think that that's how you can feel the way you're supposed to feel, is with help of a substance. And unfortunately, it's just a layer, right? It's just covering up something else Go
Well,
on.
when you're uninhibited,
Right.
holy moly, you can have a good time. You can do all those things like that you daydream about and think about, like, especially if you're really craving some kind of connection or attention that you're not capable of healthfully entering into when you're sober.
Well, the
It's a
only
whole
time I
different
could
world.
bluff in poker was when I had too much to drink.
Yeah.
And then I could giggle my way through a hand, and they were like, well, she's laughing so much, she must have a good hand. I had a terrible hand. Terrible.
Okay, I'm going to put that on my wish list. I want to see Julie under the influence of alcohol and play poker.
Right.
I got to put that on my list.
But in a normal situation, like, I'm a terrible liar, right? But in that situation, I was like, gosh, they totally believe me. Like, they think, and so they're like, well, she has to have a good hand. No, not at all. So now I've given my tell. So if you ever see me just giggly in a poker game, my hand is terrible.
Okay.
Just so you know.
All right. We should
go on.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No. That's okay. Where was I? I was using drugs at a young age. I know we started
using your mom's stash. Getting into your mom's stash. She doesn't notice.
No. Where were we going?
Well, I don't know. You said I mean, that was you. Your grandma had died 14.
Mm-hmm.
All of the bad behaviors got a little bit worse.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I was, we went, so my whole plan on, hey, I got it. This is how we're going to start. We're off the rails, but it's okay. I'll get back there. But no, like, I started sneaking out, even on school nights, because my parents were also super controlling. I imagine it was because they were very wild as teenagers and didn't want that for their daughter. But the more they controlled and,
as teenagers do.
Yeah, the more I rebelled. And I got caught a few times over many years. The number of times I didn't get caught, 98% of the time.
Wow.
I had it down to a science. There were nights, mornings when I'd be out, go to bed, I'd be out partying it up and never sleep. Come home, sneak back in, go get ready for school, go to school, and do it again and again and again. There were times when whatever boy I was like obsessing over, God, I hope I've told my husband the story. I think I have. But there was this one guy that I just was infatuated with. And he was actually a pretty decent guy, which means I ended up screwing him over because, and then regretting it and all this stuff. But I had a friend, I said, and I just wasn't in the mood to like sneak out. My little sister was sleeping over with me in my room and doing things like introducing my sister to vodka. I mean, it was really stupid stuff, but that's what big sisters do. So I asked my friend to go find this guy that I liked and bring him to me. I didn't think he'd do it. Well, he did, and this guy had been partying, so he was hammered. He kind of shoves him in my window, and this guy is passed out on my bedroom floor. He strips down. He's in his little bikini underwear. They were baby blue. I'll always remember that. And I'm just like, and my little sister is sitting, she's 4 years younger. She's sitting on my bed like, what the hell is happening?
Yeah.
Oh my God, there's a boy in Charity's room, and and he passes out. I cover him up, whatever. And it was like Easter. There was something going on. Oh yeah, it must have been around Easter, because my dad's birthday is in May, and so this must have been like just after Easter, right before his birthday is right at the beginning of May. And so my mom had his gifts down in my room that she was going to give him that next morning. So I hear her hit. So my bedroom door was at the bottom of the stairs, and I hear her footsteps on the stair that morning. I'm like, oh shit. I throw a blanket over the pseudo boyfriend, love interest, whatever, throw a blanket over him on the floor. And we'd had like this little sleepover, so it didn't look out of sorts. Ran to my dresser where the presents were, picked him up, and just as she was opening the door, I'm like, oh, I was just bringing this up to you. Yeah. And she never saw the mostly naked guy laying on my bedroom floor. So But that's the kind of shit I would pull. And, like, I'd be mortified if my daughter had done those things.
I
and
lived
she
on
didn't
a
need
second
to.
floor. There was no climbing in a
No,
window.
that was good. But like my daughter didn't need to, it was like open lines of communication. It was not, I am going to trust you until you give me a reason not to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there were times when I would do that. I remember one time in particular where, just to kind of set the context of like the cycles I was trying to escape, it wasn't just the fighting and the abuse and the drugs and all the stuff from my family, what I was exposed to from birth. It was choices too. It was decisions and I was always incredibly like straight A student, always really smart, always really smart.
Which is why, like, even at school, when you're up all night, whatever, and you go to school with virtually probably no sleep or almost no sleep, and like even teachers probably weren't like, "What are you doing?"
No,
because
no.
they wouldn't.
no
It wouldn't have
idea.
been an obvious like, "This child's failing. We need to check into her home life," or we need to see what she's up to outside of here. You were
Under the
getting
radar.
good grades. And
Teachers
so you
liked
could,
me.
Yeah,
There was
you
like,
could
yeah, I could
get
pull
through it.
off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like thinking about where I was going with that was like trying to like escape all of these situations. It really led to some destructive behaviors. I got to the point where I didn't know how to approach somebody I was interested in or let them know unless I was absolutely inebriated. And when you're talking about drinking a bottle of Jack Daniels, I don't even know what.
Right.
My gag reflex is permanent at this point. Southern Comfort, but being so drunk, blackout drunk, and who knows? I mean, I am aware of some of the things I've done when I'm in that state. Not that I remember it, but that I'm told. But there are some things I'm sure I don't know. And I remember a couple of different guys that I grew up with getting me home. If they took liberties, I don't know. I don't think they did. Hopefully they didn't. But like literally being back in my room, in my bed, shoes, clothes on, and I don't know if it was honestly like just alcohol spewed, like vomited all over my bed or pissed myself or whatever. I have no idea, but just like I did get busted that time. My mom came down and it was not a pretty scene. And so she knew I had been out. But again, for every time that I did something like that, there were like dozens of times that they had no idea. So I knew this wasn't healthy, right? So graduate high school, and that year between high school and college, that was a hard year. You're at some point hear some stories about the year and the antics and all the things I was doing in it. And I think it was just, I felt so stuck and so helpless and so like, if this is life, this isn't what I want. And so I had a friend who was very much like me, very similar upbringing, similar life decisions. We were two peas in a pod. She was a little more advanced in the drug use than I was. And one night, as we were going to get something, she knew a dealer. I really kind of was along for the ride, but I was also that kind of person who at the time was going to do something to fit in, right? So the first time I snorted a drug, I'm like, okay, yeah, here we go. I'm going to end up like my dad. I can't do this. And so I went to School of Mines, South Dakota School of Mines. Back then it was called South Dakota School of Mines and Technology. Now it's just South Dakota Mines. And I didn't even know what an engineer was. I knew what college was, not that it was ever promoted when I was in high school. With the grades I had and always being in advanced classes, there wasn't a counselor or a teacher or anybody that, Charity, you need to take physics. You need to do these things and get some of these never talked college. So I had no idea. I was smart, but not like, I didn't know that path because no one in my family had ever done that. So it wasn't like they just like I look at my kids, I have a son, my youngest is ready to graduate his undergrad in May, and it was never a question. College was
Right.
always part of the fabric of just this is what you do in life, right?
Same in my family.
Yeah. I mean, I went to school with your siblings. So I go there and I'm heavily under the influence, and I just knew, like, I was desperate. I don't know if what they saw. I mean, I was pretty good at faking, pulling it off. And I just said, I'd be interested in going here. And they're like, well, you need and I can't remember back then if it was your SAT or your ACT. And I said, okay, what's that? What do I need to do? They're like, well, we happen to have this test coming up on Saturday. It's $100 or $150 or whatever it was back then. And I'm like, okay, sign me up. Let's do this. And so I go in, rock the test, and get accepted. And I had to do something. And so that was kind of the start of it, because it wasn't about one-upping my family.
Right.
Although that was how it was perceived.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, there were some conversations. And I was really proud of, like, oh my God, I'm going to college. Who would have thought? Nobody had ever, I was the first one to do this. And I just thought, maybe finally, ? My parents will be proud of me. Nope, was not the case. And if they were, they never expressed it. But it was more of like, oh, you're better than us. You think you're better than us now. And I'm like, I don't. I just want better. I want different. I don't want these struggles. I don't want, I don't want this. I imagine I'm going to have, it just has to be different. I cannot go through life if this, where the bar was, is where it was going to be my entire life. I just felt like there was more to life. And this is a really wild tangent, but we lived in Turkey when I was a kid. My dad was in the Air Force, and so we moved around a little bit. I was born here, moved around a lot, and then came back here in 5th grade and grew up here. But in Turkey, so I was 5 and 6, started kindergarten there. And I remember there was this field out next to our house. And I would just play out in this field by myself. There were these little wild honeysuckle flowers, and they had really sweet nectar. And I would just sit there for hours. And this is going to sound bizarre. Maybe I'm schizophrenic. I don't know. No, I'm actually not. But I actually had a conversation, higher power, whatever you want to call it. And I didn't know what it meant at the time, as far as the words being used and how I was interpreting that, but I knew what it meant. And it was all about, you are here to break these cycles. And I knew what it meant. I didn't understand the word cycles and what was going on. I didn't have that language yet to understand what it was like living in my household. And it wasn't all terrible, but there were a lot of things I wanted to make sure did not get repeated if and when I had children, right? And I can remember the sunlight. I can remember everything about that moment. It is imprinted on my brain. And I carried that with me all those years. So fast forward to growing up, some of the things, and again, my dad is a great guy. I'm not here to bash him. I'm just here to tell you, here are the incidents that led to all of this. He had a very interesting physical, that's the word I'm looking for, way of expressing his displeasure or disappointment or whatever. It could be a backhand, it could be a fist, it could be, whatever. I remember one time, it's ridiculous and it's obscene, but it's what happened. I would often get grounded from the phone. This is days when the phone was actually attached to the wall and it had a cord. And I was grounded from the phone, and because that's just the way to hurt me, instead of today you take away your kids' devices or whatever. Well, you're grounded from the phone. Well, they were gone. My dad came home, and this is in the middle of the day, caught me on the phone. Instead of okay, you're grounded longer or something, took the phone, hit me in the face with it, and broke a tooth. So for years, until I was actually out of college and had an engineer's salary so I could get my teeth fixed, I had teeth issues and very, I already had self-confidence issues, but now I don't want to smile. I'm going to cover my mouth when I talk or when I smile or, anything like that. And it wasn't huge, but it was noticeable. I mean, I had a corner taken out of a tooth being smacked with a phone. And it's just one of those things. It's I could never imagine that. And it's these moments where I don't believe that's what's in his heart. I don't think he's a hateful, hurtful person. Like, it's not his nature. He's actually a really funny, fun, love life kind of guy. But it's those impulsive, reactive, and I I don't know a lot about his history and upbringing, but I've been able to infer some things. And I'm not here to really go into all of that, but I would guess it has to do with the way he was raised and the things he was exposed to and the stuff he had to endure. And instead of ever sitting down and going, maybe that wasn't okay and I want to do different, it was just like, and that's cycles, right?
Yeah.
Typically, we repeat our cycles. Well, like I said, from age 5, I knew that I had to do something different. So I always carried that with me. And again, that last time I did drugs and then to going into School of Mines, I'm like, this is it. I am going to finally fulfill that. So the last time my dad had assaulted me, I was 17. And when we would go into things like that, get into an altercation, it was always ridiculous, but I could never back down. I would know I'm going to get my ass kicked, but I could just never back down. And that is so like what we talk with our guests about that hardwired fight, flight, freeze, fawn. God, it's so hard to override that and do something that's going to help preserve you. And in a way, that's what it's there for. But it backfires a lot. And when your fight response is kicking in with someone who you're not going to beat, it gets pretty stupid because then you're just pissing the person off. And it wasn't just my dad. I mean, I fought with plenty of people. I started fighting and expressing violence from. I mean, the earliest time I remember was probably first grade.
Wow.
Moving back to the States. Well, maybe it was second grade, or maybe I came in mid-year, so it probably would have been first grade. And maybe second? I can't remember now. It's a little fuzzy, but very young.
Yeah.
And I'm talking about a fight drawing blood with a little girl because she said something to me, was snotty, and I was just tired of putting up with people's shit. And so we ended up becoming best friends, but it started with a bang.
Yeah.
And blood. And so I guess we were blood sisters, but good Lord. I mean, and I neither one of my kids has ever been in a fight, or anyway, it's just wild to think about. So that's kind of the setup. So I start going to Mines and living my best life. I have friends that are going places in life. I meet a guy that's not my type, and it's absolutely wonderful. We've talked about, this guy before who ended up becoming my husband still. Oh, Lord, can't believe that happened some days. Very good to be around, just positive influences and respect, being respected, being seen, being heard, not being objectified, that kind of a thing. Like it was weird. It was very weird at first, but it was kind of nice. I was doing incredibly well in school. I changed my major 1,700 times because, again, I didn't know what an engineer really was. So I was kind of, trying to figure everything out. Started out as mechanical because I roughly understood that. And I was always, like we've talked about before, very mechanical. I knew how to fix things. I would figure them out if I didn't. Probably should have stuck with that. I don't know how I landed on civil and environmental, but that's what I ended up doing. So fast forward to this would have been 1995. I'm semi-living at home. That's my address. That's my residence. But now I have this serious boyfriend. We've been dating for several years. So at his frat house, at his frat room, most nights, or at my sorority house with my sisters most nights. So I didn't really stay at home. But this particular Sunday morning, I had 2 exams the next day. And so I'm down in my room studying and just, doing my thing. And Mines was hard, and I was really smart, and I did incredibly well, but I had to work at it. It was not natural. The course material, man, you have to be way off the charts if you're just going to breeze through that school. So I'm doing my due diligence and making sure that I can beat all the guys that I'm in competition with in classes. We definitely had a friendly competition going. And I go upstairs to get something. And this was an occasion where my sister was home. I have a sister that's 4 years younger, and she ran away from home a lot, would be in different situations where she wasn't living with us, was in a group home or whatever due to a variety of challenges, again, stemming from the family we were raised in,
Yeah.
She's incredibly smart and gifted and talented and just super cool. But, her trajectory was even different. I mean, she didn't finish school in the traditional route. She kind of followed my mom's footsteps, got her GED later. But she's just absolutely brilliant and super fun and just cool. But she happened to be home, which wasn't a normal thing. And they'd had a breakfast that I didn't partake in. So I go upstairs and there's, a bunch of dishes. House was always neat. I did get that from my mother, my tendency to be like OCD neat freak, right?
Yeah.
But my dad makes a comment to me about, I want you to do these dishes. And my response was, I didn't dirty them, and I'm studying for 2 exams, and I don't have the time. I'm not going to do this. And he had this look on his face. So now I'm 21. He had this look on his face that reminded me of 17, when was the last time he assaulted me. And so I'm like, oh, this is weird. I thought, he had a major life-altering event where there's like a tumor on his pituitary gland when I was 19, and that had to alter. He had to make some lifestyle changes.
Okay.
So to my knowledge, he was clean, sober, not using, so I thought that had stopped a couple years prior. He had this look on his face, and I thought, oh, is this really going to go down? Okay, maybe it is. And he was yelling at me, blah, blah, lazy, this, that, other thing, whatever. So I go downstairs, close my bedroom door, lock it, turn around, and I wait because I know what's going to happen. And sure enough, door gets broken down. He comes in, fist raised, and I stopped him for 1 second. And I just said, I want you to know, last time I told you, so, several years prior, you do it again, I'm going to turn you in, which I never had. I had never reported him all these years. Because as a child, as someone who's a minor, there were times when I did not live at home and I was homeless and couch surfing and doing whatever I had to do to have shelter. And sometimes that was not a pretty picture, and they were really bad choices, right? Mm-hmm. But I just remember I had said that to him when I was 17, and I was going to follow through with it. Mm-hmm. And he had a choice to make, and his choice was to punch me. Knocked me down. It got very violent. All kinds of things happened. And this was the first and only time my mom actually tried to protect me. So the fight was already happening, but she came in, threw herself over me. I'm on the floor on my back, and he's over me hitting. And he got her out of the room. He'd never, to my knowledge, ever harmed her, ever assaulted, abused, or anything. Her, ever. Never. It was always me. Sometimes my sister, but mostly me. And I just thought, well, that's weird. Hell must have frozen over because, she's trying to protect me. And she kind of got thrown out of the room. And I remember him saying, you ever interfere again, blah, blah, there was some kind of consequence. Mm. And that was the first time I'd ever heard him, threaten.
I was going to say threaten
her.
Yeah.
So.
Because they were very, like you said, 2 peas in a pod, kind of. They were very close. They had a...
I don't know, I can't speak to connect. I don't know. I think they loved each other. I think it was obsession that turned probably into love over the years. That's just my observation, my opinion. I'm not trying to, put words in their mouth or anything like that. But anyway, the assault happened. I didn't know what to do because now I'm stuck in this house and there's all this craziness going on. He's now out of my room. There's fighting going on. My sister's home. It's chaos. I call my now husband, then boyfriend. He was working, and I just said, this just happened. I don't know what to do. I can't get out of the house. He said, get out of the window, which I've already established I was very expert at, right? So I threw my study materials in my backpack, got out the window, ran across the lawn to my car. My dad figured it out that I was making an escape. And he came out of the house, grabbed some big rocks from the garden and started throwing them at my car. And my car was like my pride and joy. I had just graduated high school. I went to a credit union and just said, here's my pay stubs. Here's my grades.
Yeah.
Please, can I have this loan? I need transportation. And they freaking gave it to me. They're amazing. Mm-hmm. And so it's like $1,800 back then, right? So I had my little sports car, and he was chucking rocks at my pride and joy. And I got away, and I got to the sorority house. God, I can't believe this still makes me get shaken up, but it's okay. So I get to my sorority house, and I followed through on my end of the deal. So I called the police, and they came, and they photographed me, and they did all the stuff. And then they went through the thing. Okay, does your dad have weapons at home? Yes, he does. Where are they? Da-da. So because it was a domestic violence situation, they did go and make the arrest. Now, a couple things happened from that. Now, the pattern was when I would have these incidents with my father growing up, I'd leave for a while. It could be hours, it could be days, whatever it took. Back then, very limited options on where I could go and what I could do. But the pattern was a few days, few hours, whatever I was feeling, I would call my mom when I didn't think he'd be around and get the sense of, is it safe to come home?
To go back.
Yeah. And she'd give me kind of the all clear, and I would.
Oh my gosh,
yeah.
This is just heartbreaking.
I know. And I'd go back home, and, it'd be fine for a while anyway. And so a few days after this, and I'm not looking very pretty. And it got to the point where, because I reported it from a sorority house, they called the dean's office at my college. And so I got pulled into the dean's office, and I'm like, I'm already mortified. I'm morbidly embarrassed because
this is my life.
I'm trying to remake myself, right? I don't want anybody to know that this is
my life.
This is my life. It's freaking awful. So, on the plus side, when you're in college and you have to rely on your parents' finances for school, and, we were never rich. There were times when we struggled, and, commodity food and Salvation Army shopping and all that kind of a thing. But I don't really know how to navigate that world. And so they had to teach me how to, or they took me through the process of getting emancipated so that I could finish college without having to have any reliance. And it's not that my parents paid for college, because they did not. But it was no longer now when I would, re-up my financial aid, was never going to be any longer dependent on my parents.
Sure.
Because I'd have to get information from them, for what's now a FAFSA. I don't think it was called that back then. So that part was good. And the support from faculty and admin at the school was amazing. I remember walking down the hall after a class one day, and Dr. Sue Shirley, she's one of my favorite professors, and she was more in the liberal arts side of the coursework, like electives,
humanities.
And she was also our sororities advisor. And she knew, the sorority I was in. And so she came up to me in the hallway after a class, grabbed me by the shoulder, and I turned around and she goes, "Oh, it's you?" So they had told her,
there's a student.
There's a member of Alpha Omega Epsilon that was assaulted by her father. And she just wanted to tell me, please let that girl know that I'm here to help. And so she just looked at me in the hallway and filled with tears, and I'm just like, hi, yeah, aren't I pretty right now? This is awesome. So, but it was still really heartwarming, even as mortified and embarrassed and just, as I was. So that happened. So a few days later, I remember we have like a big formal event with the sorority, and dress up, and makeup wasn't going to cover up what was going on with this. So everybody knew, they knew. And I was still pretty private. I didn't give them a lot of details. In fact, it wasn't until just like the last few years that some of my sisters that they didn't realize they kind of, well, you know how I have this reputation where I don't intend to, but people are intimidated by me. And
it's true, listeners who are not in the Rapid City area.
And it's stupid. And, it kind of, I've told you, it kind of breaks my heart every time it happens, but whatever. It is what it is. But I've had sisters come to me and just say, like, oh my God, now that they see what I've built here and, and why I'm so dedicated to helping people break these cycles, they just had no idea. Because I just never wore it on my sleeve. It's like I was embarrassed. I was shamed, that nobody wants to be known for that, or victim. It's really awful. So anyway, a few days later, getting ready to go. This is a formal event. I figure, well, it's been 3 days. I should call my mom, at least let her know I'm okay. Because she was always my best friend, just that person. Waiting for the all clear. Well, this call went entirely different. So I give her a call, and she's just said, I don't know what you're talking about. Your dad never touched you. I am not your mother. You are not my daughter. Something to that effect. And I'm like, gut punch of the century. Like, I literally didn't know what to do. So now I'm homeless in college. I am parentless. And I think 2 weeks into that, I found out I was also pregnant with my fiance's baby. So we moved that wedding up. But yeah, it was just one punch after another. And then, from there, I was going to stick through with my end of the deal. I wanted that cycle to break. I didn't want my dad to... He whatever drove him to do those types of things, I didn't believe that's who he was, because he could be an amazing person, and he really is. Like, these cycles have to break. This isn't healthy. Somebody's going to get, there has to be some kind of help, right? So I continued with those proceedings, pressing charges for the assault. And then, at that point, it's out of my hands. The state's attorney's office has taken over, and especially in a domestic violence case, this is what's going to happen. So we're getting ready to go to court. I know that I'm going to have to see them, and I haven't seen them since the thing happened, right? And it's been probably a couple months at this point. And victims advocates come to me right before court. Like, I'm in the courthouse. The proceedings are going to start in 15 minutes or something. And they say to me, we just want you to be aware, Charity, that your dad is on probation, and if he gets convicted of this assault on you, he's going to prison. And I'm like, what do you mean my dad's on probation?
You really didn't know.
I had no idea. I thought he'd been clean for years, right?
Was it drug related?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. And so they fill me in on this, and I'm gobsmacked. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not trying to send my dad to prison. I'm trying to hold him accountable.
Yes.
Right. That it's not okay to beat up another human being. And I'm saying this as someone who has been in many, many fights. It's never okay. And also has been beat up by people other than my father. Like, I didn't win every fight I was in.
Right.
But I had a decision to make, and I said to them, I'm like, prison's not the answer here. Like, clearly he has a problem that needs to be addressed. Anger issues, drug issues. I don't know of any prison that's going to fix that. And I'm really thinking about these cycles and these trajectories, and then I'm like, the only thing I could think of at the time, honestly, after all the shit I endured, was taking that higher road and hoping that the decision I was about to make would stick with him, and that would change his behaviors. So one of my very good friends is actually the state's attorney. So she knows this story. And nobody's pressed charges against me yet for perjury, but I got on the stand and I said I made it all up so that he didn't have to go to prison.
I lied my ass off to save that man from going to prison because I didn't think that was the right thing to do. Meanwhile, I'm doing this, and my mom and my sister in the back of the courtroom sneering and making these horrible faces. And I mean, well, my mom's a whole nother story. My sister I've totally forgiven because I'm sure my mom fed her a bunch of bullshit and, you know, she believed it, and that's fine. Whatever. I mean, whatever. You know.
She's young.
She's young. But so he didn't go to prison. So my parents are cut out of my life for quite some time. I now have a daughter, and they still have my dog, my little dog I got when I graduated high school. And my sister reaches out and she says, hey, you know, so they weren't at our wedding, none of that, you know. So, you know, I had an aunt give me away because I didn't have my grandma around, and all that crap. So she reaches out and she said, hey, you know, Mom and Dad would really, really love to meet your daughter. And I had to think about it. But then I said, okay, I want something in return. I want my dog back. And she said, okay. They figured it out. They came to, well, maybe they lived here. They did live here. We lived in Minnesota, but they lived here. And so I met them. I let them meet their granddaughter. And then, you know, my husband and I had some really hard talks about it because he was raised by amazing parents who were supportive and were with him every step of the way and never struck him or, you know, exposed him to drugs or, you know, it just, you know, again, they
pretty idyllic childhood.
Very idyllic. Just good people wanted to have children and invest in them and have them be amazing human beings, right? So that's the approach I took when I raised my kids. But I really got off track there a second.
Well, Fluffy comes home.
Fluffy. Okay, yeah. So that happens.
I don't know that the dog's name was Fluffy.
No, her name was Chloe. Her name was Chloe. But so my husband and I had a long talk, and I thought, you know, I think about the things I knew about both of my grandparents, maternal and paternal grandparents, and how they were amazing grandparents and probably struggled as parents. And so I thought, okay, I wonder if being a grandparent would, and we see it in people we serve, like we've seen grandparents raising their grandchildren because their children who you know are out of the picture,
right?
But they're redeeming themselves through that. They're like being a better version of themselves. And I just thought it was really important for me to know my grandparents. I want my kids to know them. I'll endure this, and I will work on what I can do for the relationship. But I want to try to gift my children with that. And so we went that route. It was very rocky. When we first brought my parents back into our lives, my dad was incredible. He apologized. He owned everything. He thanked me. He just apologized profusely. Like, he knows what I did for him. He knows. And that really made me feel good. My mom, on the other hand, has never owned it. She has gaslighted me all these years. She told the cops that I had my boyfriend, now husband, hit me so I could have bruises to show the police. Like, these just absurd accusations, right? And that's perpetuated all these years. And she's also someone where if you just sweep it under the rug, it never happened. And so I grew up a fawner with my mom. Oh, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Just whatever we had to do to get her back to happy. And because you know how, like, some of our, you know, Care Beth calls me a radiator. Like, whatever emotion I'm feeling, everybody's going to feel it. I can influence a room even if I'm not saying a word, right? Some people are just that way with their energy. My mom is very much that way. I definitely got that from her.
Okay.
So, you know, just trying to make her happy and put out the fire and just, like, get back to whatever. And, there have been, again, multiple times in our life where it's up and down. It's up and down. Went through a phase where, so now I have parents-in-law, amazing people. Now I have a mother-in-law because my father-in-law passed away. And my mom, just with her...
She has a lot of insecurities.
Yeah, that's the word. Yeah.
We've talked about this before where
I'm sure she would be disagreeing. If she hears this, she's going to just say, Charity's making it up. She's blah, 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 right? But really had it in for my mother-in-law. And my mother-in-law is an angel. Like, she's just
wonderful.
The kindest, sweetest, most virtuous angel. She's an angel. She's an angel on earth. And so then that was another battle. And like, okay, you don't get to disrespect my mother-in-law in my home. Like, come on. And my mother-in-law bent over backwards. Like, let's invite your parents for Thanksgiving. Let's do this. Let's be a family. Mm-hmm. Never worked. Always blew up in our faces. And I'm just like, welcome to my world, Shirley.
You said once, like, if you mentioned her name, if you mentioned Shirley's name in your mom's
do you want me to mimic this?
I don't know. Do I?
Well, I'll tell you a quick story. So my father-in-law was declining dementia, led to Alzheimer's, led to his passing. And my parents came to visit one summer, Memorial Day weekend, I think, Labor Day, I don't remember, one of the things. They came to visit because they'd moved to Colorado by then. And my dad has always been on very friendly terms with my in-laws and wanted to know the status. And we can't talk about my mother-in-law in front of my mom because it goes nuclear pretty quickly. So we're out on a patio of a restaurant. She goes to the bathroom, and I'm like, okay, Dad, quick. Here's the update on Mike and Shirley and da-da-da-da-da. And the episode, because my in-laws had just left town shortly before my parents came to visit, we had been at the same restaurant, and my father-in-law was trying to read the menu. We were trying to get him to order. It's like, what do you want, Mike? And he would always defer to his wife. Well, I don't know, Shirley, whatever you're having. And I would push him a little bit. Mike, what do you want? And if you really pushed him, like at the time, of course that changed, but he could do it and he could make a decision. And so I was telling my dad that. I don't know, Shirley, what do you think? So that was the thing. My mom comes back from the bathroom. Now, I've mentioned that because of all the life choices my dad's made, he's very impulsive. Doesn't always like cause and effect. Think about that. And very unfiltered. Very unfiltered, right? And so my mom sits down and she asks a question. And my dad, thinking he's being funny, because he is a funny guy, he looks at her, he goes, I don't know, Shirley, what do you think? And she doesn't know the context. Now, if I had been in that situation, I would have been like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about?
What'd I miss?
Like, did you just have a stroke? What's going on? Instead, it was, what? And just when we talked about radiator, oh my God, it's like nuclear waste, like just emanating from her in this cloud. And we were out on the patio, like there were people I knew I'd introduced, my family to, and I'm just mortified. Like, what? Like she had just been called the C word or something. Like It was that equivalent. And I'm just like, and she does these things in front of my husband. Mm-hmm. That's how little, anyway, not very self-aware. And I'm like, and she knows my husband's a saint. And insults his mother in front of him. And then my tendency back then was just like, no. Here's what I was telling Dad. This is why he said what he said, because he's not explaining it. And I'm just like, let's just put out the fire, right? And then things just, continue to escalate. That was a crazy trip. I won't go and tell the stories because I'm sure I'll tell them
at some point.
And it'll just blow your mind because you'll be like, parents don't behave that way. Oh, some do.
Yeah. Well, we'll take a quick break and then we'll talk about your escape artist act that you pulled in part by going to college and some of the choices you did end up making, including the people you decided to include in your life. So we'll be right back. At One Heart, transforming lives begins with safe, stable housing and a support system that allows people to reach their true potential. It requires motivation, mentorship, and a myriad of services. It takes time and treasure, but it's worth it because it's working. One Heart provides people with a sense of security, opportunities for economic advancement, and adds dozens to the workforce each year. Learn more about why One Heart works at oneheartrc.org. All right, we are back on this edition of the Escape Pod, and Charity just shared, I find it to be heartbreaking stories about, although you did break the cycles.
Did break the cycles.
Yeah, so is it safe to say you certainly used education as an escape pod?
Education, counseling, all the stuff.
All the stuff.
All the stuff, yeah.
And then I do remember we probably hadn't been working together very long when one day I said, have you ever wondered what your life would be like if you didn't meet Tim, her now husband? And you were very blunt and like, yeah, like it could have been
I know
completely
exactly what it'd be like.
So the choice in including him in your life, letting him into the crazy a little bit, did completely, you have experienced what it's like too to have the in-laws that you had and to have, because one is still with us, so that's a blessing. What do you think about that? How often does that cross your mind?
Well, because of the work that I do, and monthly I get to meet with all of our new clients. We call them guests here. And I always want to give them a little bit of context about why One Heart is the way it is. Like that there's science behind every piece of it. Mm-hmm. And an amazing opportunity. And I go into some of my stories. I make sure they understand I'm not just some person who has a college degree and studied up on,
and just wants to help people. No, it's a little bit
this
more
is
than that.
lived experience. I've been where you're at, and it's meaningful. And I tell them I'm not saying that you have to divorce all the people in your life. I'm saying that's what I had to do.
Correct. The escape looks different for everybody.
The escape looks different for everybody. And and it's still an ongoing thing, right? It was just almost 3 years ago now was the last time I talked to my mom. It ended up in a screaming match, which I think was the first time that had really ever happened. And she made it very well known that she dread was the word she used. Dread's talking to me because she does not want to hear about the work I do. And this was my life's work. This was
it's another baby.
Oh my!
It's having another child.
You were with me for the whole thing. You saw what I poured into this. Yeah. Everything, heart, soul, reputation, everything. And I just remember saying to her, "Would it kill you to be proud of your kid for once?" That was the last thing I ever said to her. And and then I'm always the one that extends the olive branch. And so for weeks, my husband and I'd be out hiking, biking, whatever, and this is all I could talk about. I'm ruminating. How am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix this? How am I going to fix this? I didn't break it. It was just I got to the point in that last conversation where I am tired of fawning. I am tired of being gaslighted. I'm tired of, just the whole thing. And I was trying to speak my truth for the first time with my mother. Did not end well. And so I'm a fixer by nature. Everything I've ever done is solving a problem and trying to, from fixing a mechanical piece of something to a system to, in my coaching practice, a person, always want to fix things, right? And, I got to the point where I'm just I don't know what to do. And my husband said something to me that was so simple and so profound. He said, "Charity, when are you going to stop being Charlie Brown?" And I'm like,
yeah,
good on you. Yeah. Good analogy. And then I'm like, well, I'm done. Yeah. So months after the last meeting, I get a letter from my mom, and I finally hit a good place because every time I have to cut them out of my life, I grieve.
Yeah.
I grieve.
Oh, yeah,
I feel like they've died. They're my parents. I still love them deeply. So you grieve, and then I finally get to a good place, and this letter shows up in my mailbox, and I just went, I have a choice to make. I'm either going to engage again and keep the cycle going, or I'm not. And so I put the letter away. I've never opened it. And I just said, no, I'm good.
Do you still have it?
I still have it. It's in my home somewhere, but I've never opened it. And I just can't because of the 50 years of relationship on and off with this woman. There's never been genuine apology that I can remember. And so my fear is that it's going to be more gaslighting. I'm sorry, but it's your fault. And I can't go through it again. Like, I think I have come to appreciate, especially in the work that I do, that I don't think I could have done this or would have created it the way it is had I not gone through all of this stuff. Like, my parents made me who I am, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to harness the things that have made, my work compelling and fulfilling and just
like it wasn't in vain. Those things didn't happen
that there was a reason for it.
Yeah.
And that I can turn that into something beautiful and powerful. And I just walked someone through here yesterday that I grew up with and had heard about One Heart, but didn't really experience it. They walked through it and they were just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Like, and anyway, so
I had somebody the other day at one of the community colleges that we partner with. We've had a number of students go there, people who maybe never thought they'd go back to school and end up going back to school, which is very cool. And one of the ladies said, I just was so impressed when I actually, toured because you guys thought of everything. Well, we know we didn't maybe think of everything, but we have certainly tried, and we are still willing to adjust and add and, do those things. But it was, I always tell people a lot of our efforts very intentional. They're virtually nothing is by happenstance. Sometimes, of course, in any area of life, sometimes it's just good luck. Something happens and you're like, oh, that was great. I'm so glad.
I think about you, being with me from day one on this adventure.
Yeah.
And your parents have been here and have seen this and have brought friends.
Yeah.
My parents have never set foot on this campus.
I know.
They're not interested. Or she's not. And so, my dad will go along to get along because, got to keep her happy kind of a thing. But anyway, it is what it is. I'm done being Charlie Brown. And I just instead, I harbor no ill will towards my parents. I would love to have them in my life, but on my terms.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't want to set myself up for more heartbreak because it's 50 years. I'm kind of learning now. Like, I don't want to continue doing that. So I'm just going to continue to set that example for the people we serve here that they can do that. I'm not saying they have to do that, but that's what I needed to do to really break these cycles.
And your own kids, like your own kids fully recognize, I think, that their existence is much different. As children, their lives as children.
Well, you think of adverse child experiences, that whole study and the ACEs score.
Yeah.
I know we have a guest plan to talk about some of that stuff. But, my ACEs score is pretty high. It's like a 7 out of 10. And we'll talk more about details on what that means. But honestly, One Heart is pretty incredible. And going to college, being the first-gen college student, that was a feat. But the thing I am the most proud of is breaking those cycles, and my children have zeros. They have never had those adverse childhood experiences.
Yeah.
And boy, the way they approach life and the things they've accomplished and their self-confidence and their relationships. I watched the relationship with their father. God, I wish I would have had that. But it is so cool because, we fixed that. They have that. And if they have kids, it's going to be an entirely different situation. So just being a cycle breaker, God, that's my greatest hope for humanity and the people that come across our campus and the work we do. And, the people listening to become an escape artist. It is possible. It is not easy.
Right.
My trajectory is not easy, but if it can help another human go, holy crap. Especially if you hear wheels off the bus go bang, bang, bang and all this stuff and the things that I did and how I'm not that person anymore. I think that's something to be a model for other people that, good Lord, if I could do it with the shit I was pulling, anybody can do this, right?
Yeah.
And now we have the support systems and all that kind of a thing in place. And that's really why I do the work I do every day.
Yeah. Okay, real quick, because this is longer than usual. Any place you would like to escape to? Something fun, a mindset, a place.
Honestly, it's a good night's sleep. I haven't had one of those in a while.
So the nearly perfect husband.
He got sick, which never happens, and so there's some going on at night, and I love him dearly. I have thrown some punches and
Light punches.
light punches.
Nudges. Those are nudges.
Oh, they've been harder than nudges lately. So it's been going on for about 4 weeks now. And,
oh my goodness.
And I'm very tired. I'm exhausted. He went to Atlanta this week, and I was so excited to have my bed to myself. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then something happened every single night where I did not get that long sleep. It's been crazy at work. It's just been, crazy. My friends have had crises. Like, it's just been all kinds of things. So he came home last night. I didn't get to see him. I told him I have a meeting at 6 o'clock in the morning, dude. So you're on your own. I'll see you in the morning. I was aware when he got home and crawled into bed, and he even tried, like, he's not obviously doing this on purpose.
Right.
But, like, breathe strips and tried something and woke me up. And then once I'm awake, I'll just start to nod off and he'll do it again. And I'm just like,
yeah.
So I finally just got up and went to another bedroom, and the bed's different and my hip hurts and there's different sounds. And I'm thinking about the 6 o'clock in the morning meeting, and now I'm not in my element. So what if I miss my alarm and everybody's depending on me? So anyway, I did not sleep. So I moved my next meeting up an hour, and as soon as that meeting goes, I will be in bed by 5 o'clock this evening.
Really?
I got to do it. I'm so sleep deprived. I'm not going to be good to anybody. Like I said, this has been a really hard week. So I want to escape to my bed. Oh. And I had a friend today give me some tips for the husband. And my husband's and my work paths cross sometimes. Uh-huh. We were in the same meeting this morning, and I said, hey, I got something for you. So he's like, what? I'm like, you're going to do this, and we're going to give it a go.
I think in our household, that we do not sleep in the same bed. I joke, we don't even sleep on the same floor anymore. He likes the basement. And in our old house, there was a reason for that. It's because we had a very restless child sleeper, and his bed and our bed shared a wall. And my husband is a very light sleeper, in part because of his work. And so he would wake up, anything
he's
the child
did. He's a firefighter, just so you know.
Firefighter. And so they need to kind of,
be up and ready on
be
a
light
time.
sleepers.
Yeah.
And so the child, even if it wasn't anything wrong, he would often wake up. And so then he was like sleep deprived at work and sleep deprived at home. And so I'm the one who said, why don't you go downstairs? And I thought in time he would come back. And he didn't. And it used to bother me. And those days are done. It doesn't bother me. We even moved into a different house, but it still had a downstairs bedroom. And he didn't. The first couple of nights we slept in the same room, and he was trying to be so nice. But I know not all the time, I don't think I snore, but I do snore. Same thing, like you get stuffed up. We're in a super dry climate. Yeah. That's part of it. And he was trying to be nice, and he was like, I really just cannot sleep next to you. So fast forward to just this past weekend, and we had a sporting event out of town. He couldn't go because he had to work. And so my kids were with me, and one of them, still the bad sleeper, is a much better sleeper, but he's still kind of hard to sleep next to, the younger one. So I was actually in bed with the older one, and I realized, like, okay, now I'm the one who can't sleep with somebody. It drove me crazy. I hardly slept that night.
Oh, funny.
And I'm like, so all the roles have reversed in our life, and I'm kind of like, yeah, I'm okay with it. So I have had quite a bit of caffeine today, so I won't be escaping to sleep anytime soon. But I don't know. I think I would just what I've been missing is a good episode of like Wheel of Fortune, because we are so busy in the evenings and we're hardly ever home at night. And locally, that's on right at the time I'm leaving the house, and that's what I would, if I could just just sit there
something to
or
not
Jeopardy.
Do
Can I
anything.
just have like 30 minutes of a quiz show?
Yeah,
that would be fantastic.
Well, good
So
luck with that.
maybe, I know, it's time to get a DVR or something. We're pretty, we don't have a lot of technology in our house, so, which is funny. I used to always say, I was on TV, and we never had the fancy TV.
You know what I've been
Isn't
doing?
that funny?
Actually, what I want to escape to besides bed, what I'll do before bed is watch Key and Peele.
Oh, yeah. Oh, they're fun.
Oh, they are so funny. And I just,
Yeah.
it is so talented and
Yeah.
just hilarious. The things they think of, it just cracks me up. And I don't have to think. I can just laugh.
Yes.
So they're kind of my heroes right now.
Yeah.
So I'll do that.
That's fun.
Until I fall asleep watching it, because that's what I do. And then,
I've done, do you ever watch Graham Norton clips?
no, I haven't heard of Graham Norton.
He's a British
Ooh,
TV talk show host. I'll
you
send you a couple good ones
Okay.
because they're pretty funny. Yeah. So I'm the same way when I really just need I need a good little laugh, and they can be as short as 2 minutes, or they can be a compilation of good interviews that kind of have similar topics or whatever. And those will get me kind of chuckling all to myself late at night same thing when you just okay, I just need to let my mind go
Yeah.
and not care. And so, yeah. So
I notice too, I'll
might be
do that
your
a lot more
escape.
when I'm stressed out and even though I should probably just sit and do nothing and listen to nothing and just, I'm constantly listening to podcasts.
Yeah.
So for the last couple of weeks, it's been catching up on Sinisterhood. That's one of my favorites. Just
Okay.
constant episode after episode after episode after episode. And I just love it. And they're so talented. And yeah. Or another one is Scared to Death. It's a husband and wife, and that one is pretty funny. Even though stories are scary, he's doing it intentionally, try to scare the bejesus out of his wife, and it's pretty funny.
I'm telling you right now, I'm not listening to that late at night.
I know you're not going to do it. Some
Not-
of them are
not
pretty
that one.
horrifying.
The others, you've told me about some others I could probably get into, but I don't want to go to bed scared. Because
No.
again, I'm in my bed by myself, right?
Well, and I was doing that while my husband was gone. Was it? Oh, yeah. So my doorbell thing goes off, and I don't see, and I'm starting to look around corner. It's ridiculous, and I do it to myself. But at least then I'm not thinking about work or I'm at least pulling myself out of that. Being scared probably not the best thing for my adrenaline and cortisol levels, but
No.
they also make me laugh, and I think that's just what I gravitate. That's the same thing with my husband. That's the first thing that attracted me to him, was that he was funny. He made me laugh.
Is he though?
Well, not to you.
Depends. Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
he gives you a lot of help, but
He's just mean to me, but I'm getting used to it. We've known each other for a while
it's
now.
in fun.
What was our theory? He dated a girl named Julie, and that maybe is why.
Nope. The girl who introduced us was named Julie, and she and I were
Hellions.
bad news together.
Okay.
And he put up with, not just my shit, but the two of us were a powder keg. And
Okay.
maybe we should have an episode of Charity and Julie stories. But he finally said one time, okay, that's the two of these together, they're on an island that no one else can get on. They have their own language. They have their own, all they do, it's one look, one word. They know exactly. And, but no, the antics and the amount of trouble we got into in college, he got fed up. There were so many times just God.
So this is
it could be that.
repressed feelings. Yeah. I don't know.
She's my daughter's godmother, and boy, meeting her, that actually is a really wild story.
for another day.
For another
For
day.
another day.
But it's
All right.
off the charts.
Well, we're going to wrap
Yeah.
up this edition of the Escape Pod.
So thank you for tuning in. I know it was a little heavy today. I actually didn't expect to get emotional because I've talked to Julie about this story multiple times, but I got in it. Adrenaline, cortisol was going the whole time. But we really appreciate your support. If you like what you heard or you can relate to it, please share it with a friend who you think might enjoy it or relate to it or benefit from hearing that story and that trajectory. And just so you know, Julie and I are a two-person operation. We write, research, produce, and promote the show all on our own. You can really help us out by rating, reviewing, and subscribing wherever you listen to your podcasts, and it really, really helps grassroots efforts like ours gain more exposure. You can check out our website at escapepod.live, follow us on our socials. You can reach out if you feel like it at justbecause@escapepod.live,
Or if you want, you can share your story of escape with us, and maybe we'll share it on a future episode. You can send those to escapeartist@escapepod.live.
We want those. We want your stories.
Yes,
so
we do.
Please
Please,
write
please,
in.
please, please,
escapeartist@escapepod.live. We're closing the hatch on this episode of the Escape Pod. Remember, trauma may be inevitable, but how you grapple with it is optional.
Stay resilient and keep laughing.